seems to be maybe going to try to make good on that promise.
Yeah, that's right, Kate. Look, the White House says that this is something he campaigned on, and it is something that President Trump's voters voted for, that they chose him for this. Now, as you said, two sources tell NBC News that the White House is drafting that executive order to potentially eliminate the Department of Education. One source saying it could come this month. And a separate source says that the White House will oversee any legislation before Congress in order to do this. And as I said, this is something that White House officials will tell you that the president campaigned on, and therefore should come as no surprise to the American people, Kate.
Gabe, stay with us. Rahema, they're saying it should come as no surprise, but let's take a step back. Like, how, this is a large agency, the Department of Education. How much does the Department of Education right now have impact on all of us, our kids, our schools?
It has a lot of impact. Dollar-wise, it's not so big. It's only $1 out of every $7 that goes to public education comes from the federal government. But its impact can be huge. Brandy Weingarten, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, she was on our air talking earlier today about that impact in reference to something called Title I, which the federal government administers. Title I gives money to children in low-income and high-poverty communities all across this country. She talks about its impact as well as the government's impact on other agencies. Take a listen.
26 million kids get money from Title I. 7.5 million kids get money from the Individuals with Disabilities Act. 13 million kids get money from Pell Grants and things like that. 5.5 million kids get money from English language learner funds. All of these things have been appropriated by Congress. All of those things go directly to children.
And it's a big impact. Think about the population of public school students in this country. We've got 50 million public school students, and she just said 26 million of them get funding from Title I. That's a lot of money. It's
so
a big
like
impact.
half of them. If the Department of Education, and this is a big if it were to go away, so the states are the other $6 of the, when you said 1 in 7 is federal, the other $6 of funding is state funding, right? So can the states just pick up the slack?
Some of them can't, and that's why they rely so much on the federal government and will follow some of the guidelines of the federal government, because funding in this country for our schools is basically a state and local funding issue. They get their money from the state government and local municipalities. It comes from property taxes. So if you live in a community where it's a wealthy community with high property taxes, your schools are probably well funded. If you live in a community with low income families, you probably don't have as much funding for your schools.
Gabe, let me go back to you. Is the argument that other departments might be able to do the work that education was doing in some of these areas? And does the president even have the authority to eliminate a federal department?
Well, we are in uncharted waters here, Kate. Many legal experts say no, that that's up to Congress. Only Congress can create and dissolve federal agencies. But the president was asked about this yesterday, and he says that when it comes to fraud, in his words, that yes, the president can do it, although it's unclear exactly who would find out or find any evidence of this fraud. So at this point, Kate, again, we're in uncharted legal waters, but many legal experts do say that the president does not have this legal authority, Kate.
And the president is following through on campaign promises, as we've said several times here. He's doing it with the help of Elon Musk, who is not confirmed by the Senate. He's an outsider serving a role. What do we know about his role and the extent of his influence?
Well, NBC News has learned that he is now a special government employee. That means he's not a volunteer, but not a full-time employee as well. But he can work in the federal government for up to 130 days per year. And if he were to work, say, a half day, that just counts as half a day. But that gives him more power, Kate. Still, many critics say that a billionaire with billions of dollars in federal contracts should not be given this much power. So there are conflict of interest concerns there as well. But it is clear that he is wielding a whole lot of power and has become very, very close to the president in just the last few weeks, Kate.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez and Rahema Ellis, thanks to you both. President Trump also expected to speak with China's president soon as a trade dispute grows between the two countries, the U.S. and China. China announced new tariffs on American coal, liquefied natural gas, and crude oil, as well as agricultural machinery and pickup trucks. The retaliation came just hours after U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods took effect. The tariffs that President Trump had announced for Canada and Mexico have been paused for at least 30 days, both of those countries announcing measures to secure their borders with the U.S., which was one of the president's demands. Here to help us go through all of this, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans. Christine, it's a busy day. Let's start off with U.S. tariffs on China. Imports from China are being hit with a 10% tariff, right? So what is the impact on the people watching at home?
You know, the biggest category of goods that are imported from China are actually like personal computing and consumer electronics, you know, your laptop, your smartphone, your cell phone, your video game console. So those are some of the biggest things that are imported. They will now cost 10% more. You've also got drugs and pharmaceuticals. There's some concern that prices for generic drugs in particular could rise, also for antibiotics. You've also got industrial machinery. That's the third largest single category. This is something that a lot of small and mid-sized and even large American companies rely on, the machinery inside their factories to make goods. So you can see how costs can be passed along the supply chain.
Yeah, and what about the opposite, the impact of the Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods being exported to China?
You know, it equals about $14 billion. So experts today are telling me it's largely symbolic, really kind of the China telling the U.S., boom, we can retaliate, and that we will not just take your tariffs with no kind of response and reaction. They are more targeted. You know, the U.S. Tariffs on China are over everything. These Chinese tariffs are on just certain categories that you listed.
Okay, and Christine, China also said today that it's opening an antitrust investigation of Google, the company, as part of its response to the U.S. tariffs. How significant is that?
And also placing another couple of companies on its, you know, on a list of, you know, of unknown actors, or a bad actors list, if you will, for the Chinese government. Look, this is a long and complicated relationship between Google and China. China has censorship. China tries to control its media. The typical American media companies that you think of, like when we use Gmail or we go on Twitter or X or whatever, those aren't, you can't see those in China. It has such control over what people see. So just, again, another salvo, another reaction from China.
All right, let's switch and talk about Mexico and Canada just for a second. So the tariffs on those two countries are delayed for right now, but there's still a lot of uncertainty for businesses and consumers because we do bring in so much from those countries. What are the short-term, long-term impacts if those go forward?
Well, they still could happen. So this isn't a deal. It is not resolution of that trade uncertainty. It is just a pause. And as you know, you've heard me say it a million times, Kate, uncertainty is kryptonite to small business and medium-sized business owners. They're trying to plan out for what they're going to buy, who they're going to hire, what the footprint of their company is going to be. They're trying to make plans, and they don't know if there will be big tariffs a month from now. So that uncertainty is still in play.
All right, Christine Romans for us. Christine, thank you. And let's keep on the topic of money. Today's CNBC Money Minute. State Farm wants to raise insurance premiums in California, and Super Bowl ticket prices are